It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I am the guy they call Smoker Broker. Happy Thursday. Hope everything's going well. It is cold in Dallas. Good Lord. Forecast down there, we're almost looking at, I saw 4 degrees in a few days. That just doesn't happen here very often. You know, the shows across the country, KBJ Media, we're at Raven Radio, we're coast to coast, but most of the listeners we have are in the state of Texas, and for us, that's cold. I mean, we don't typically get below 25 degrees very often, but right now, even today, we're sitting at 25 at a high. So for us, we're a little perplexed when we have to mess around with that. It's a little extra having to cover things. I don't ever cover the pool equipment and the faucets very often, but I went ahead and did it this time. I remember it's probably been over 8 years since we had that cold of a freeze. And the last time it happened, it didn't turn out very good for us. So I was being a little more careful this time around. So lots going on right now in the real estate world. There's no doubt the biggest one this past week, well, actually in the past 48 hours, is Zillow's announcement that they are now out and about and they are in the showing service business. Gotta love Zillow. I'm waiting for them to get into the auto business, the AC business, and anything that touches anything in the general public, because that's obviously their plan. And you know what? Good for them. Good for them. Go ahead and get into everything you can. Because one thing I've learned in all the years I've done this and in the previous careers I've had, when you start getting further away from your expertise, you start getting further away from doing what you do best. And make no mistake, what Zillow has always done best, and what I and millions of others have always given them credit for, and still to this day, they were geniuses on how to create the internet to bring in data. All right? Where they are not geniuses, in my opinion, is getting to where they've grown it so much that they want to invade into other things. And no matter how intelligent anybody is in any executive level, when you start getting to a point where you stop not focusing in on what it is that you do best, which for Zillow was accumulating data and giving it to the general public in a very pleasing way. When you start getting away from that, you start hurting the corporation that you're under. And in my opinion, you know, when you start looking at things like that, you start investing in Zillow and all those types of things, that better be in the back of your mind, because they are starting to go away from what it is that they do best. Now they're in the showing service business. They're going to go ahead and show houses. They're going to open it up to where they show houses. They're going to let agents of all brokerages, so listen to this, all brokerages call in, schedule their clients with their information into the company that they own. Now, I'm an educated guy. I didn't go to Harvard, but I'm an educated guy. I've not been too bad in business over the years. But I can tell you, even if you didn't have a college degree, even if you didn't have a diploma from high school, any moron would tell you that that is probably a bad idea to give a competitor data straight through from your client into their system. And look, if you hadn't figured it out yet, especially if you're a real estate agent, this is all about data. This is not about marketing. This is not about growing the business. This is about data. They know that the capture of data is critical in this industry. They know that it's the data that is the future. And they know that what they lack the most is the past data from the last 40 or 50 years. That is one of their biggest weaknesses, is that they don't have the data from years past. And guess what? They're never going to get it either, because that's housed in all the other brokerages that are out there. So what they're doing is they're making an implant starting today that they're going to have the data moving forward no matter what.
Yep.
And the only way that's going to work for them is that they're able to get their hands on the data. And the way you get your hands on the data is you start looking at where the data flows through. And one of those flow-throughs is, in fact, through the showing services. Now, here's my question, or my thought. The showing services, they're not everywhere. We don't have showing services all across the country. They're only in specific places. So Zillow throws $500 million to purchase this thing, but they're not everywhere. And I'm going to make a real educated guess right now. My guess is you're going to see in the next couple of months a lot of withdrawal from that particular service.
Yep.
Because there is no way that a mega brokerage or a discount brokerage or a smaller brokerage or any brokerage on the face of this earth is going to say it's okay that you can take my data.
Makes me wonder too, if a person calls in to them, because I'm sure Zillow will put that number very accessible to everyone. Call to schedule, and those operators are going to say, "Are you working with an agent?" And maybe they say yes. And they say, "Well, do you have a buyer's rep? Well, let me connect you to one of our Zillow agents."
Yeah. And, let me make it clear. I'm very careful when it comes to mentioning another company's name. I've been very clear that I'm stating opinion. This is my opinion, which I have every right to it. I'm not disparaging Zillow in any way. In fact, I've kind of congratulated them on certain things. But I am also predicting what I think the way people will respond to it. And you can go ahead and try to do everything you can to get your hands on the data. But other people can counter how you do that. What amazes me most is the way Zillow puts the spin on it. Their chief executive officer comes out, "That's not what we're doing. We're not doing that." You know what? That sounds very similar to what he said not even 2 years ago when he said we were going to get into the home buying business, saying, "Oh no, we're not getting into real estate."
Yep.
I'll be damned. Here they are, not only in real estate, now they're on their own brokerage. Now they're out there capturing the data. And look, we have always been a competitive industry. All brokers welcome competition. The ones that are good don't mind that. But that's not what's happening here. You don't have someone who's being a friendly competitor. Right now, you have someone who's trying to go behind the lines and take the data from other people. And they're doing it in a way where they're acting like, "Well, we're not doing anything." Like, you are. You just don't want to act like it, because you know that it's not received well publicly if you're doing it that way. It's almost, in my opinion, it's almost like you're playing the game a little unfair, a little unsportsmanlike conduct, which I really believe. And you know what? That's fine, because there's nothing illegal about it. Nothing at all. But something about karma in this world. I tell you, I'm not a superstitious guy, but I do believe what comes around goes around. And if the intention is to slyly go behind, say, if we do this, this, and this, we can have all this, that probably won't work out in the way you will think it was, no matter how many millions and billions of dollars that's sunk into it. It's interesting to me, the general public, how they keep pumping money into Zillow and really not even knowing what it is they're doing or what they're trying to set up. They're just going on the mentality that they're like the Coca-Cola of the internet when it comes to, putting the home data out there and being letting the general public look at homes and stuff. But they're colluding with all these other things to slowly back their way. And still standing here today saying, "We're not competing." You're absolutely competing. And that's fine. If you want to compete with us, we'll compete with you. But don't sit there and act like you're not doing it. At least stand up and tell everybody, "This is what we're doing. This is the way we're going. And we're ready to go." And we'll be like, "Come on, let's go. Let's go. You want to do this? You want to get into this industry? You haven't done it in 50 years. We've been doing it for 50 years. We know the highs and the lows. We know what happens when we go through peaks and lows. You want to get into it now? You want to just start and say, "Oh, I can do this." Go ahead. You better be prepared, though, for the backside, the uglier side of brokerage. The uglier side of brokerage is having to deal with the general public. when they complain, and when they sue. And you better have people in that company that know how to handle that type of business. Because no matter what anybody says, you guys are starting from day one right now. You can bring all the experienced people you want. You can bring anybody experienced in that you want right now. You are still running behind because you do not have the experience in brokerage. So if you want to play brokerage, you want to come into it, come on. There's nothing I've said here that's disparaging to you. There is nothing I've said here that doesn't encourage you to come in or to prevent you from coming in. All I want you to do is be honest with what it is you're doing. That's my biggest beef with them. You just tell us what you're doing. That's fine. Don't hide around it. Come on. Tell us what it is you're doing. That's cool with me. Because I'm ready for you. You want to compete? Let's go. That's fine. It's free country. And you guys have a great platform too. You do. You have a great internet setup. And that is key to the business of the future of real estate. But you're not the only one that can do that. But I will tell you this. The other people that can do it, they also have the experience. And they do have the past data, and you don't. So good luck. Go ahead. Tell everybody that you're doing this new stuff and you're entering this. And you've sold X amount of houses and whatever. But let's see how for the long haul. Because the people that are pumping money into that, you better realize that that model has to sustain. It has to be able to move on. Buying tons of houses and selling them at a loss, at some point gets bad. At some point, the math doesn't work out. At some point, employing brokerages and the broker actually makes a mistake and causes losses because maybe they're not as experienced, that stuff piles up. So if you're doing the research and putting money into something like Zillow, you gotta keep your eyes open as to what is actually going on with Zillow. The real question becomes, is Zillow a real estate expert? I know what my opinion is. They're not. In fact, even if they've done it for 20 years, they're not. Are they an expert in illustration and presentation of people's houses and showing them in an appeasing way? You bet. In fact, I'd say they're probably the father of that, even though it's probably realtor.com, really. But they're the ones that perfected it. They knew that there was something to that. Kudos to them, which is why that company's made a lot of money. But when you start getting away from what it is that you do best, you know, the only thing I'll compare it to, and this one I won't say any names on, but it's like big chain restaurants. You notice how all big chain restaurants, like the casual dining, notice how all of them, they started off doing a few things very well. They made the best hamburger, or they made the best taco, or whatever. And that's all they did. They sold hamburgers and they sold tacos, and they came to fame, and all these people made money, and the firms grew, and everybody goes to this place because of this or that. Yet you fast forward that 20 years down the road, and that same place that was so awesome that came to fame now has this 20-page menu of not hamburgers, but fajitas, Italian food, appetizers, salads, vegan, gluten-free, and it's like a 10-page. And then they get to where they're not as profitable as they used to be because they have to have all this stuff to be able to cater to the general public, and they can't sell all that stuff. So the margins go down, and they're not as strong as they used to. And for some of them, they get themselves into debt. They start having trouble. Then it just takes something like the worst pandemic in 100 years to expose them, and the next thing you know, they're gone. That is a very similar possibility when you start branching out and doing other things. And that is something that anybody who knows in general business, when they're focusing in on somebody, when they start to expand, if they expand too far or they go outside their protected limits, so most of the time causes problems. And that will be the telling tale about what those guys are doing. There's not anybody in the real estate world that yesterday did not have comments on that move. That has probably been the most discussed item across the country. And if Zillow was trying to get a lot of advertising and marketing out of doing it, good job. Because there's no doubt you were the most talked about person yesterday. Whether it's good or not, that's a whole nother thing.
You better be buying stock and alternatives to showing
right.
time right now.
You just better watch how that all pans through. And in the end, and I'll tell you why I opened the show with this today. Well, one, because it's a real estate show. And two, I
Because we're
had
talking
no
about
less.
bad words.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah, I can't use them there. Actually, that's good, Dallas. We could have usually molded the two, right? I had no less than probably 50 texts yesterday of people asking me how that affects us. And in the fact that we are having to discuss it, it does affect us to some extent as far as it's another competitor that we're having to watch. But as far as the day-to-day goes and what we do, it doesn't affect us in any way, shape, or form. We still believe the general public knows exactly what that is doing. And there is a very select group of people that actually might go those routes if Zillow tries to perfect what it is that they're doing, in my opinion. Had an attorney friend a long time ago always told me, if you talk about someone, always make sure you say it's your opinion and that you're not stating its fact. Because when it's opinion, everybody can have an opinion. There's nothing I'm saying that says, oh yeah, they're doing that. And that's not true. In fact, I might just be crazy wrong. But I'll let the rest of the people who listen decide that. I know the people who watch me and listen to me, I know they know what I'm saying. And I know that they know that we're all in the same boat looking at this thing right now. So it'll be interesting how it pans out and where we shape the future of real estate. I will give Zillow this, and this is something Gary Keller agrees with too. There's no doubt that technology is the forefront of real estate. It is the future of real estate. And those that are successful have to embrace the technology. But you better have the back end of it, the experience side of it. And that goes to the leadership too. And here's another one I won't name names on, but there are brokerages out there that are kind of in that same boat. Like over the last 10 years, they're new and up and coming, billions of dollars invested into them, powerful. Make no mistake about it. You are still new to this game. You're still new to it. Your leadership is still new to it. Their lieutenants that are under them are still new to it. And no matter what you do, they're going to continue to always be 20 to 30 years behind the people that started this stuff. And that's going to be a very interesting fallout over the next 5 years as the firms, all of them, in a free capitalist society, battle for who is the leader in not only real estate, but technology. But here's the thing, you have to have both. You can't be one or the other. You can't be just real estate. You can't be just technology. You got to have a good blend. And those, in my opinion, the people that do it.
Do you see other large firms merging together? I'm not saying any names, but just to be able to combat those.
I don't, because I think the firms that are already in place that are considered the founding fathers of all modern day real estate, they feel pretty firm in their associations. Now, this was already done recently with the Realogy Group, so you have some mega firms in there, but even that, because you're kind of alluding to it, I wouldn't necessarily say that those were massive partnerships. Those companies still really operate independently on their own. They just pull together for shared resources on what they do. I don't think they did it to fight better or financial concerns. I think they did it more towards shared resources. So no, I don't. I think the way you see it is the layout now, and you see a consistent battle of the mid-range firms trying to get some piece of that with some type of gimmick or technology that makes people turn their way. That's something that hasn't been done before. One of those tries to get in there. But in the end, look, this isn't the first time we've done this either. This isn't the first time that we've had someone come into the real estate industry trying something different. And again, I'm not going to name those either. None of those guys are even here anymore. Now, they continue to try to replace. Zillow believes that they can replace the real estate industry. And again, for people who are educated dealing with that company right now, that run that company, I'd love to pick your brain and tell me, how do you feel that you think you're any different than anybody else, including the internet? Because the internet was supposed to be the big replace for real estate, which is probably the biggest thing that's ever happened in the world for, actually since the beginning of time. The internet could be considered one of the most significant things that affect lives on the face of it. If you don't think that the internet can take real estate, what makes you think you can? What makes you think that only a few people can run this? Because again, unless you have the intimate knowledge of the people inside, the relationship they build. By the way, anybody, the people who watch on our archives, you want a good takeaway from the show today? This industry is based on relationships. And you might find a relationship on the internet, but you're never going to keep it. Those are cold, cold leads. Most people don't become friends off of the internet on real estate. You can argue the social sites all you want. Most people who purchase real estate off of internet sites rarely prevent. In fact, what are the stats? Isn't the stat like, I think the stats are less than 10% of repeat business off of an internet.
It was like 6% or something like that. Yeah.
That doesn't sound very successful to me. So if you think you can replace the industry with that type of ratio, good luck. More powerful than anybody would have ever dreamed.
Yep.
It's not like anybody doesn't know what you're doing anyways. It's not like you're fooling somebody. Yeah. That's the part I think that gets me. Is they're like, oh, they don't see this coming. I'm like, oh, we see it coming. Here's another question for you. If you think that that's so good to do that, why don't you think somebody else has done that already? You don't think anybody else has thought about that? They were just smart enough to realize that you do that, you cut your other hand off. It's the people that are purchasing and buying stuff with you, they won't do that anymore. All right, I'm not going to apologize for a longer opening on this one because it was real estate driven and it's current events. And I never mind anybody who watches our show. We have topics on the show, but anytime another topic comes in that's more important, I have no problem pushing the show off. If I thought we could have a longer conversation about this morning, I would have titled the entire show that. And I knew it could only go about 20 or so minutes. That's why I did have another section of this show. It's just going to be a little shorter because this one tended to be a lot more important than I thought. But we do still have about 40 minutes on the show, and we are going to spend the rest of that time talking about the bad words in real estate. Now, we've done this show. It's probably been a year or so since we've done it. But when I talk about the bad words in real estate, I'm not talking about the F word. I'm talking about the words that are used that can get you in a lot of trouble as a real estate agent. If you are a fairly new agent, then you probably would not even know that some of these words are dangerous. You would probably not even realize that you could actually be sued, maybe even lose your career, depending on the way you word them. And that's what's going to be the most significant takeaway from the show today, is acknowledging that, wow, I had no idea, which that's why we created the show. This show is created for you to watch and go, nobody taught me that in a book, which almost everything we talk about is rarely talked about in a book in the show. Because we talk about reality. We talk about day-to-day what happens to us so that you're better and you're smarter when you're out there as a real estate agent. So this show will be very good for you as a new agent. It's good for even mid-range agents too, because I think some of them, actually, I'll take that back. I know it's good for some of the mid-range agents and the veteran agents because some of them still do this. And I'm going to point that out when we get to those words. All right. Let's start with some bad words. It's not like talking to our kids. Let's start with new. Dallas, why is saying new a bad word?
Very subjective.
It's subjective.
Very subjective. What is new? Is it new 3 years ago? Is it new tomorrow? Is it new today?
That's right.
What is new?
That's right.
I use new to me.
What's that? It's new to me.
New to me.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, those are great explanations. Let's be more specific and talk about how we see this. So we have clients at times that tell us, hey, make sure when you write this up and you put it on the MLS that you say that the air conditions are new. I'm like, that's awesome. When did y'all put them in? A couple weeks ago or so? And they're like, well, no, back in early 2000 we put them in, but look at it. You go, that's not new. In Texas, let me tell you two things that are never new. Air conditions and roofs. They're never new. In fact, even after a week, they might not necessarily be new. All right, so you gotta be careful when you make the assumption that you say something is new. because what's new to you is not what's new to me. Some people think that new is within the last week. Some people think that new is within the last month. Some people think it's within the last year. According to the example I just gave, some people think within the last 20 years is new. Doesn't matter what your opinion is. If you're going to state it, the takeaway here from the show is if you're going to use what we consider a bad word being new, you better damn well put the date on what you consider new to be. I got no problem with the guy that said his air conditioner was brand new. That was 20 years ago. As long as he says brand new as of 2003. It'll look pretty stupid in the MLS, but at least he's being honest about what his perception of new is. You put the date when you're going to say new. All right, it's a really good takeaway from the show. There are way too many agents out there on the MLS that say new and they don't put anything behind it. In fact, if I went through and scanned through the MLSs right now, in all the major hubs in the state of Texas and anywhere in the country for that matter, I'd be willing to bet that no less than 30% of those listings have new in it that doesn't identify what new is. If that number was 5%, it'd be a concern. More or less 30%. It might even be more than that. That is a terrible word to use by itself. All right, so that's takeaway number one from today. We're talking about bad words. New is a bad word.
What about brand new?
Brand new, even better. Brand new a year ago. That's not brand. Now
It just sounds so much better.
It does. Brand spanking new.
It's better than replaced in 2017.
Mike makes a good point there. It sounds better. Now we're going to talk about that in a few minutes here when we start talking about the descriptions in the MLS and how people use things, because Mike makes a good point. It's not just the word itself that can get you in trouble. It's the way you utilize the word. And he's right. By saying it sounds better, that's what gets agents in trouble. They start wanting to really live it up because they're salespeople, so they start inventing words to go with those words to make it look better than it actually really is. So that's actually a good point. We're actually going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So I want to hold on to that thought because it's a good.
What about my family-oriented Oasis is brand new?
So Mike just took about those 4 words he put in one sentence, and that's awesome because we're going to talk about all those. Good job in summarizing them in one sentence. That's hard to do. Because I'm going to tell you right now, he's just giving you a preview of the next 20 minutes or so because each of those conversations are going to be discussed. In fact, I don't even mind talking about it right now. I'll tell you the words we're going to talk about. Family is one of them. That's a terrible word to use in real estate. I'll tell you why in a minute. Oasis, he picked a good one too. Oasis is a good one. Oasis is a good, or not a good one. It's a good one for the show. A good bad word for the show. But it's bad to use in real practice. All right. So he's right. He said in one sentence in there. So those are a couple. We're going to get to those here in just a minute too. Let's talk about one of my favorite conversations. Not only because of the frequency of it, as much as it's asked, but the naivety of saying it. How many people think there's no big deal to this? And this is really one of the foundation pieces to fair housing law. In most fair housing, complaints are not what you would think. Everybody thinks a fair housing complaint is when someone laws off some type of derogative towards some type of race or whatever, and that's fair housing. Yeah, about 90% of the fair housing complaints are typically someone who said something that didn't even mean any harm. They just didn't realize the way they said it was bad. And that gets us in our next conversation. The next word I want to talk about is safe. Safe is a very bad word in real estate. Because once again, as Mr. Dellis said, safe is subjective. Safe is subjective. This is also going to be alluded in, combined into the same conversation because they're directing at the same thing. Is this area safe? Is there a lot of crime in this area? That is probably, if you're playing the Family Feud, that is one of the top 5, as survey said, answers in real estate to what a realtor gets asked. Is this area good? Is it safe? Is there a lot of crime? Now, the average new agent, naive agent, or even the average person in general, if they're asked, let's just talk about a place that they live in. If someone says, hey, is the area safe? Dallas, what do most people say? Like where you live. You live in a really nice area. That's a good one too. Nice, by the way. Let's, if someone asked you, just stop the side of the street, and I know you know the answer, but answer it like somebody else would. If someone said, hey, how's the area around your subdivision? What's your immediate response without even thinking about it?
Oh, it's really good.
Really good. Yeah. Do y'all have a lot of break-ins or anything like that? I mean, do y'all have issues like that or anything like this? Is crime bad?
No,
No.
nothing
Right,
I've heard of.
So Mike's a veteran real estate agent, and he's done this for quite some time. He just answered like 99% of the general public would, that if someone asked them, how's the area you live in? How's the crime? That's exactly what they probably would have said. Okay. Real estate agents, especially newer ones or less experienced ones, they tend to do the same thing. They tend to answer the same way, because what are they trying to do? What's the ultimate goal with this client? What are they trying to do?
Get them to buy a house.
Selling the house.
Get them to buy the house, to sell it, right? Do we really want to try to sell something that has a bad crime area or that's a bad area? No. All right. So when they're asked that question, common sense, as far as they're concerned, dictates that they answer, oh, no, it's a great area. Great schools, which we'll preview. That one's coming up too. That's what's great about this conversation. It's all general, but boy, it's real specific as to what can be problems in here, because it's a general comment, but the consequences to the actual word are far beyond what you would think. Okay, so you have all these people out there, all these agents out there answering that question. You can get in a lot of trouble for telling somebody that an area is safe. Because here's the problem with that. What I consider to be safe is not what's considered to be safe to you. I might not have a problem in a very crime-inflicted area because maybe I've been there before. Maybe I've grown up in there before. Maybe I've worked those areas before. Theft, minor crimes, things that you would think make you unsafe, probably don't mean anything to some people. To other people, they'd be more. We have people that are mortified that if someone ever got in their house, they have anxiety that someone broke into their house. Like they're concerned that they've been violated. Which I'm not saying they have or they haven't been. But there are other people that'd be like, hey, did they steal anything important? All right, good. And that'd be the end of that. It's subjective. It's subjective to say that, is the area safe? And then one of the houses last week had a brick thrown through it and the glass shattered. And just by coincidence, cut one of the children that was sleeping in the room, which can make a really bad headline for someone to go, oh my God, this is awful. When in reality, it was a punk kid trying to find his girlfriend and he accidentally missed and hit a window. It's subjective. It's relative. Doesn't mean the area's a problem. It means that some punk stupid kid did something dumb. But now it's on the report records as attempted and harm to a minor. You know, I mean, you have all these things in there that can be problematic, but they don't mean anything. Now, let me tell you the real problem with safe. Okay, and especially if you're a real estate agent, this is what I harp on my group all the time about. And that's part of the good part about the show, as well as that we don't mind sharing what we talk about. Those that follow the show know we run one of the largest teams in the country with the SWR group out of Keller Williams. So we see a lot of this. Those of you who don't know too, I've been a long time instructor. I'm well endowed in the education of real estate. And so I see a lot of these things. And this one's a bothersome one because it happens all the time. So we'll see it inside a team. Thankfully, it doesn't happen in my team hardly ever. It has happened before, and I had to correct it. But it happens in a lot of other places. In fact, the funny part about this is, or not the funny part, probably the sick part, is that some of the people who make these statements are people who have been doing this for years that should know better than to not say that. So let's say you have a bad part of town, okay? Which again is subjective too, but everybody would acknowledge that they think a part of, notice I said think. I said think.
Their opinion.
It's their opinion. That's right, okay? So I'll share with you one time that something happened inside of our group that I had to correct.
Is that a new opinion or?
It's a brand new opinion.
This one's not a new opinion. So one time we were in a group team meeting, and a house came up in a specific area. I'm certainly not going to name the area because then it came up in a specific area in Dallas Fort Worth, and one of the agents said, "Well, hey, I don't want to list in there. That area is bad," and they do it in front of the rest of the group. Of course, I know better, so I stop before it gets any worse, and I go, "What's that supposed to mean?" They're like, they kind of take a step back, and they don't understand where I'm going with it. They go, "Well, the area is bad." I go, "Yeah, I heard it the first time." And I go, "I certainly don't need to hear it again." What I'm asking is, what do you mean? Well, there's a lot of crime in there. Did you check the stats? Do you know that? What's a lot of crime to you? Now, what type of crime is it? Did you break out the crimes? I know damn good well you didn't. I'm just saying, because I know what you're saying is just a stereotype to that area, because that's the way it's. I know you haven't checked it, because I know you personally, this individual. I know you haven't individually checked it. And the point I'm making is you're stereotypically saying about a particular area because you hear other people say that area is bad, that you've come to that conclusion. Now you've come to that conclusion that it's so bad that you don't even want to go to it. Yet, you know what you failed to see is that, and I won't name the names of the people on my team, but her and him, they live in that area. Do you see their faces right now? I don't have to say anything because it's already pretty embarrassing. I go, but my point is, you, with your opinion and your choice of a really bad word, basically just offended them because they grew up there and they've lived there their entire lives. And you know what? They don't think it's a bad area. In fact, they probably think the area that you live in sucks.
Well, the funny thing is, when I've invited you to dinner, you told me that you didn't want to come to my neighborhood because it's bad.
Not true.
No, I'm just kidding. I've never invited you to dinner.
Never say that. But look, as a real example,
I believe both of those statements.
so hard to do this show seriously with these guys. So that's what happens when you have your friends do your shows with you and they work with you. So these are true statements. Now, this is one isolated instance. By the way, we handled that individual brutally with educating them on common sense, fair housing, and how that can be very perceived and very stereotypical, especially if there's a specific race in the one area. Even though they did not intend to hurt anybody, they very well could have perceivingly hurt them with the way they said that. You have people right now, as we speak, talking to a client that just asked them, "Is that area bad?" And they said, "Yes, it is. Lots of crime." And that is horrifically stereotypical unless you actually have the crime stats and you didn't give an opinion of the crime stats and you just said, "Well, here's what the police records have," which, by the way, that is the antidote and the correct answer. When somebody asks you, this is a great takeaway from the show too. When somebody asks you, "Is that area bad?" a very professional real estate agent always says without hesitation,
Yes.
"Hey, I certainly cannot give that type of an opinion. What I think is bad versus what you think are bad are two different things. But I will tell you that you can go down and check the police records and verify everything that you need to know to make you feel comfortable with that assessment of that question. I cannot answer it."
I would assume that more trouble comes from when you tell someone, yeah, it's a great area, and they move in, as opposed to saying, "Oh, it's not safe," and they just don't buy. I would assume
this works both ways.
Yeah.
This works both ways. If you go back and say it's a fantastic area, it's one of the fastest growing areas, everybody loves this particular area, get in trouble with that too, just the same. Yeah. All right, very good. That's a good one. Great takeaway from the show. In fact, that might actually save your license one day. Here's another one. This is a good one too. I always forget, when I go back and scroll the topics that we have, and we have a ton of them. I always forget when I get back on this show, I go, that's always a good show. I go, you wouldn't think that Bad Words is a good show. You'd be like, well, how long is that going to last? It can last hours if you wanted to. But there's some good ones on here. And when we always redo the show, I go back through and I remember how important this is. I'll tell you another benefit of the show just for me personally. It not only helps with, the marketing that we do, but it also helps internally when I haven't addressed something with my crew in a long time. Now, my crew's instructed to watch. They're told they have to watch the show that the firm they're with, right? I don't sit there and put a gun to their heads, but I give them a pretty good stare if they don't. And sometimes we cover things that I don't cover in day to day when I'm structuring through. Sometimes it goes a long time. So when I go through this, it reminds me, that's great. I go because when we're done and I post the show to our group, I'll specifically email them. I don't do it all the time, but some shows I do and say, hey, we haven't gone over that topic in quite some time. I go, y'all need to watch that one because we haven't had or any type of fair housing training that we have that's on top of any training we already have is always good. So it works two ways for us personally when we do this. All right, let's talk about school districts. This one's fun too, because even the most veteran agent, some of the ones that are ranked maybe in the top 100 in the country, which we house a lot of those here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, San Antonio. Veteran agents, if you go look at their description, it's amazing how many agents put in their description recognized school district, best school district, good school district, well-wanted school district, hard to get into school district, whatever.
I think recognized is fine because I recognize them a lot. Like I see the name and I've seen it. I recognize it.
Not that type of recognition.
Oh.
So most schools in the country have a rating system, right? In Texas, one of the more desired ones is recognized because it means the state has recognized it as a good school. You have average, you have below average, which I still question that ranking system. About to get on another topic.
There we go, Lake Dallas.
Down, but I tell you, those ranking systems, how they rank a school district or whatever. By the way, since we started the conversation off with Zillow, let me give another continuation of Zillow, which I still to this day don't understand how it can still exist. We've always talked about the accuracies of the Zillow estimate, which we're not going to do that right now. But one of the things I also take great offense to is the school district rankings or the school ranking, because you talk about subjectivity. I don't know how a external company that's never even looked at a school can rate a school. Now, I've used this example before because it's close to home, but I think this is a great takeaway for the show, and especially talking about how words can be very bad depending on how you use them. And so I'm going to use a personal example. So I live on what's considered the North Shore of Lake Louisville. It's one of the bigger lakes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I live in a school district that is perceived as a little bit not as wealthy as some of the other ones. Okay? And it follows with, on a scale of 1 to 10 ranking on Zillow, it gets a 4, which is a really bad ranking when you're talking about people who are relocating, right? So if you look at where I live, which especially where we live, it's a very nice, reasonable area where we live, right? But surrounding us, it's a little, it's a little bit below the poverty level there on some of the certain sections in there. And the school itself, actually it's all three, the elementary, middle, and high, but I'm going to talk about the elementary because that's the one that's closest to us. The elementary has literally 50% of the attendants are like close or below the poverty line. And they have these criteria that they rank these schools on, from attendance to graduation rates. And of course, this one does not do as well. But because of that, it gets a bad ranking. Now, does that mean the school's bad? Do you think the school teachers at that district are any less than the ones at the prominent ones? No.
I don't know. You need to check the school district's website for that answer.
That's right. You do. He knows. But the answer is they're not. They're saying they went to the same education. They're the same types of teachers. That's not it. If we want to get into crime, is that's not even part of the ranking in there. So that's not it. Maybe it's because some of the people that go to that school just don't have the means, and maybe they don't perform as well. Which that's become a big exposure in COVID. Doing virtual, the first reaction to COVID is, let's make all the kids go virtual. Well, that's kind of hard if some of the kids don't have virtual technology. Which, by the way, in the school district I'm talking about, that was a big problem. But here's the thing, the point I'm trying to make. I actually grew up in the year, I've traveled everywhere in the country with my previous job, but I ended up living not very far from where I grew up. Actually, it's right across the lake. I can actually swim. Well, I wouldn't make it. You can swim across to where I was from. That was a very more prominent school district. And that has like the highest of the 10 ratings or whatever. Viewed as a very wanted place to go for kids to go to school. But I'm telling you right now, with having personal knowledge about both these school districts, I put my kids in the one they're at right now every day of the week. Because it's smaller, it's not as competitive, it's not as anxiety driven, in my opinion, yet it's given a 4. That doesn't mean anything. Those rankings don't mean anything, because in the end, the only thing that matters when it comes to a school district is the parents that are responsible for that kid. Because I could put my kid in the worst school district in the country, and I promise you, they're still going to excel because I'm going to be involved with them on what it is that they're doing. So now you get back into bad words, that school district is recognized. That school is unacceptable. Now here's the problem. Let's say you put in your MLS listing. This is the takeaway. Let's say you put in your MLS, whatever school district is recognized one of the most desirable districts in the state. Person purchases the house,
And it
close
changes.
on it. 2 months later, the new rankings come out, and now they're not recognized anymore because some type of testing or whatever, grades were below, and they're at average. The person who bought that house solely bought that house because of the school district. And those of you who find that weird, the number one question a relocation client asks is, how are the school districts? So it's important to them. There's not even a close second, right? School district changes. They come back at you. They might even file a complaint on you and say, you told me the school was recognized. Y'all know how I know this, right? It's happened to me. So I get this. I'm like, that's absolutely a true statement. It's not only documented, but it's factual that it was recognized at the time of the sale. You know, when I went to review board on the complaint process, which I have never lost any type of complaint against me, including this one, the board said, look, he clearly has not done anything wrong. He stated absolute fact and didn't steer you one way or the other. Plus, I also had in writing somewhere that it absolutely is your job to research what school district is best for your children. That turned out great in that board hearing. But they did tell me, almost after the whole thing was dismissed, it's almost like they wanted to give me a little bit of a slap. They go, you should have told them that that was subject to change. I'm like, that's nasty. I go, that's nasty that I have to tell someone the obvious. And they didn't slap my hand for it, but they were alluding to they could have. So when you start putting things like Glorious School District, Advanced, Blue Ribbon, Excel, whatever your state says.
Terrible.
Yeah. You better be careful about what the consequences are. You really should not be talking about school districts inside your listings. There are a lot of head brokers that be like, how can you say that? I'm like, because I've seen it before. I've gone through it. That's the thing. That's the problem with people when they start saying, well, you can't say that. I'm like, yeah, because you don't know. You've been doing this for 30 years. Never happened to you. They damn well happened to me. Anybody that's ever followed me too. I don't take the word that someone calls me an expert in real estate lightly. First of all, I don't like being called stuff like that anyways. But I will tell you it's true, but it's not for the good reason. The reason why I expertise in real estate, because I have what's called Murphy's Law. If it's bad, it will hit me every which way from here to kingdom come. And that's exactly what's happened in real estate to me. The worst of the worst, the baddest of the bad has always happened to me. and it made me better because I learned from it and I knew. And when I see someone who's been doing it for as long as I have, or if not more, and they question me, and I know damn good and well it means that they haven't seen it, that makes them a little bit less competitively advantaged against me, because I'm going to flat out say, I know you're wrong because I actually went through it. And I also know you're wrong because you're saying something that you don't know how it works. This school district stuff, it's a bad word. You got to be real careful when you're putting school district. When someone asks you about school districts, the correct response is always, there are hundreds of ranking systems and database systems that tell you what people believe and what the actual rankings are of the school. And they break it out in any statistic that you want. Feel free to go look at those, because the bottom line is I am not going to take accountability for the school that your child goes to. It's your child. You should have enough care that you're concerned about that you personally go down to the school and ask them the questions that you need to ask. A real estate agent is not the one who expertises in the level of the school.
But you know
contrary to popular belief.
You know who do expertise are our sponsors.
Good, Brent. We're almost out of time, and it's really a good way to end the show. But you know what? We never forget the sponsors.
Because Mike's been talking the whole time. I couldn't get a word in edgewise.
I wouldn't shut
Brent,
up.
go ahead and tell them the sponsors, and after that, we'll wrap this up.
So we got two sponsors today. Number one is Martin Cooley. He is our go-to guy for home inspections. I don't know if we can say that he's great. Do we have to look it up on some website? He's great? Don't know.
I think that's okay if you say it's an opinion.
It's my opinion that he is great. And he's the guy that we usually refer out most to our clients. We always give him a choice, but Martin's the guy we really hope they choose because he's absolutely professional, shows up on time, writes reports that are easy to read, easy to understand, and are not written in a dramatic way to scare our clients away. Everything he writes in the summary is color-coded from red to something that needs to be addressed, down to blue, something that's not that big of a deal. It makes it really easy for us when we scan through the inspection reports to find out immediately what is wrong and what's not. So if you want to hire Martin, you can visit him on bpginspections.com. His license number is 5595. You can reach him at 817-401-3240. That's Martin Cooley with BPG Inspections. And our second sponsor, Greg Holdberg with Liberator Health Insurance. I probably should figure that out first. With Liberator, it's your health choice. Liberator Health Insurance has plans that allow you to see any doctor and go to any hospital in or out of network, and you can save 40 to 60% on your premiums. The Liberator deal of the week: a couple with 2 kids were insured for $480 per month, and that includes dental. These plans offer the largest PPO provider network in the United States that covers hospitalizations and surgeries, doctor's visits, and no referral needed to see a specialist, chiropractor visits, preventative health screenings, teledoc, x-ray, MRIs, labs, emergency rooms, and urgent care, and much more. As an independent broker agency, Liberator works with some of the best insurance carriers in the industry to get you the most coverage at an affordable monthly premium. For more information and to get a quick quote, call or text Greg Holdberg, independent health insurance broker, at 214-886-4688, or visit him at liberatorhealthinsurance.com.
Yeah, as always, we appreciate our sponsors. They're great. And, it's always a great opportunity to ask if you want to be sponsored on the show. We do have a pretty good following that watches us. Once again, we are one of the largest teams in the country when it comes to real estate. We have a lot of real estate links, a lot of people supportive of us. So it's a great place to actually advertise, and it is not nearly as expensive as you think. It's actually fairly cheap. In fact, I don't know anybody who's not affected with real estate that does not want to sponsor on a show like this, because there's hundreds of people that watch it that are in that particular business that take advice from us. So I'm not sure why you would.
Oh, I also forgot to say that if you want to work with the man who has the worst luck in Murphy's Law in real estate, you can go to joinswr.com.
That's right. Yeah, if you want to work with someone who has seen the good and, just as Brent mentioned, the bad, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned, joinswr.com is a really good place. We're always hiring agents. That only doesn't apply for you, but that also applies for anybody that you know that's actually thinking about it. We take full and especially part-time agents. I'm one of the few brokers in the state of Texas and the country that actually supports part-time real estate. We have the systems in place to actually do both. You want the rah, 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 you want the office and all that type of stuff, I got it. You don't want that, you can't be in, but you still want the expertise, the training, and the support. There is no one in the state of Texas or in the country that can give both those things like we can do. So you can always go to joinswr.com. All right, I want to wrap everything up. The topic of bad words is a good one, because it's not just bad words. It's really contractual and things that get us in trouble, complaints, fair housing complaints, all these things flood together. And as I said earlier, I had not intended to discuss the front end of the conversation as much, but because it was a good one, I didn't mind running it over. So what we probably will do, we'll probably continue next week with bad words, because most likely we will continue another current topic that takes the front end of the show, and then it'll give us enough time to finish the pieces that we did talk about. Because look, we didn't hit some big ones. Mike alluded to talking about family descriptions when we talk about Oasis, where people started talking about how you use you describe if something's a big backyard, depending on what they're doing with it. So we're going to probably come back and have that same conversation. I'm not set on that yet, but I think that's probably what we're going to do, because it really is a good topic, because it's not just bad words. It really is talking about contractual things and words that get us into legal trouble. I want to thank everybody that watched. We always appreciate you continuing to come back. We do see a lot of the same listeners who are constantly returning, and people who watch us on archives. So we're always very appreciative to you watching. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.